Dear participants, welcome to Connect University. Today we will be discussing about plant-inspired robotics for environmental sustainability. My name is Andreea Dumitrașcu and I'm part of the Connect University team. Connect University is the flagship knowledge-sharing initiative of the European Commission's Directorate General on Communication Networks, Content and Technologies, in short DG Connect, that aims to inform the EU staff and also the general public about the latest digital trends. This project is a trademark for debates and policy advice, raising awareness about the ongoing digital revolution and preparing the society for the future changes. I will share with you a few of the practicalities for today's session. So for today's event, we encourage you to join us on Slido using the code Robotics. I repeat, the code for Slido is Robotics. You can comment and ask us questions and we will allocate them accordingly. Also, we advise you to use the hashtag ConnectUniversity when sharing insights on the event on social media. The recording of the event, as well as the slides, will be published as of next week on the Connect University webpage on Futurium. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Walter van de Velde, Deputy Head of Unit DG Connect Future and Emerging Technologies, for the introduction.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Andrea, for this introduction. I'm delighted to welcome you to this seminar because it's a bit of an outlier of what we usually hear in these kind of Connect University sessions. In fact, the program that is represented today is Future and Emerging Technologies. So we're going to invite you for a far dive. We're going to invite you to actually think a bit ahead of what is currently possible, and we have a really distinguished speaker who will help us to think about future possibilities of technology, the digital technologies, but also broader, in this case, robotics, with links to the big transformations that Europe is currently starting to go through. That is the transformation to become more green and the transformation to be more digital. And what is better a combination than these two that Barbara Mazzolai, the guest speaker of today, is going to talk about. So Barbara Mazzolai is herself actually an ideal example of what research we try to do. She has a first degree in biology and later a degree in engineering and microsystems engineering. So this is a combination that I think you rarely see, but that when it really is done nicely comes together, and especially in the head of one person, then it can do fantastic things. So Barbara has quite a track record in setting a whole new area, I would say, on the map. This is the combination between plant biology and robotics technology. This goes back a long way. I'm sure, I suppose Barbara would agree if I say that the home where she comes from, or where at least she spent some time, the Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna in Pisa, has been already for many, many years a nest in which really new things happen around this combination, very new types of robotics, be it for health applications, and now also more and more for environmental applications. And so this combination of biology, be it human or be it plant or any other, and the robotics aspect is something that seems to be in the DNA of that institute, and that Barbara is now taking forward also to her in her current career, where she's at the Italian Institute of Technology. So if you look a bit at the projects that she has been doing, I think of projects like Growbot or Plantoid, and currently she's coordinating a brand new project that just started called iSeed. It is as if she has an agenda, a list of tick boxes of which kind of elements of plants she wants to bring together with technology. She has done work looking at roots, how roots develop, and how you can apply that to technology. And now she's developing the iSeed project that looks at seeds, how biological seeds can be an inspiration for technological solutions, and in particular for what we have called environmental intelligence, so new ways to observe what is happening into ecosystems. For instance, for preservation of biodiversity or to observe climate change. So I'm going to stop this introduction because I think the best person to explain all this is, of course, Barbara herself. I think she's a fantastic participant in our programs. I think if you look for an example of what the FED program and the future European Innovation Council program that we will be merging with in the future is going to be looking for, then this is a very good example of the kind of research that we value a lot. So Barbara, the floor is yours. I count on you speaking for 30-35 minutes, after which we will take the questions that, as this was said, please let them come in through the Slido and we will pick them up from there. There you go.
Thank you, Walter, for this kind of introduction. And good afternoon to everyone. I'm share my screen and hopefully you can see the presentation. Can you see?
Yes, we can see it if you can make it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very pleased and honored for this invitation. It's a great occasion for me to present what we are doing in the field of bio-inspired soft robotics. This is my research area. In particular, I would like to focus the today's talk, as also Walter already introduced, on plant-inspired robotics. In particular, the goal of this technology and the use of this technology to improve environmental sustainability. And I would like to start with our approach. So share with you what is our vision. And our approach is in fact deeply based on bioinspiration. Which means that we start by identifying the biological models that we want to imitate for some specific functionalities. We identify the key principle and then we translate these key principle into robots, into technology for some specific applications. I will show you some of the idea that we have in mind. But since these robots are deeply based on these biological principles, sometimes we can also use the robots, the technology, to validate some hypotheses on the biological system that we take as a model. So at the end, our goal is both improving basic science and applied research. So robotics is my field. And if we look at what happened in the recent years, we can see that robotics and AI, artificial intelligence, have progressively in the field, in our society. They are already integrated in our life. If we consider robots, for example, industrial robotics, they develop most of the devices that we use every day, but also robots are used in space, in deep sea, in medicine, and so on. So there are many domains in which we can see robotics and AI, and we will see more and more in the future. But there are also some environment, some scenarios in which the complexity increases, in fact, and environments that are really unstructured, they are really change dynamically. And what is evident for us that we work in this field is that there are many abilities that robots have not reached yet. And this is why we want to take inspiration from nature, because we want to extract, as I said, simplified principle to design robots that can operate in a very complex environment, in a complex world. So, in fact, natural organisms are adapt to live, to operate in extreme environment, in dynamically changing condition, in unstructured environment. And this is why, as I said, we want to imitate them. We want to extract the key principle, and then, of course, it's not a copy of the biological principle. We need to understand what are the principles that we need to translate into robotics. And we can also see that adaptation is a sort of, we can say, a form of intelligence, especially from, we can say in ecology, we use these terminologies. So the capability to adapt and to cope with a complex environment is a form of intelligence. And in fact, in this context, in this scenario, in recent years, there is also, especially in robotics, there is a completely new perspective on intelligence that is also known as a morphological computation, in which computation is also made by the body, the capability of a body to interact with a certain environment. So we focus in our research also on the role of the materials in also reducing the complexity of the control. So all these features are very important to design the robots of tomorrow. And among many examples that we are investigating in our labs, so we are investigating soft animals like octopus or other invertebrates. But in particular, I would like to focus today on the investigation that we are performing on plants, because in our opinion, plants represent an exceptional example of brainless distributed intelligence systems. So they can really open completely new ideas and scenarios in design the robot of tomorrow. Why that? First of all, plants move. Usually we have this idea of plants as a passive organism that cannot move or interact with the environment. But in fact, they move. They move continuously. They move by adding new materials, new cells at the apical regions. And doing that, they adapt their morphology, their shape to the external environment. They have distributed sensing capabilities so they can perceive the environment, take a decision about the strategy of growing, searching, and so on. And then they communicate. It is also a very important characteristic that we are trying to translate in an artificial system. They communicate with other plants, with other organisms, in order to be much more efficient in the exploration of unstructured environment. And we are trying to translate all these features into new design, in new robots. So, in fact, if we compare properties typical of animals and plants, we can see that plants have a modular organization, which means that they have redundant structures, and this means that they are more robust also to survive in very extreme environments. And also this is relevant to develop a robot that can operate in such an extreme environment, in such an unstructured environment. They grow, as I said, for entire life. This is called in biology indeterminate growth. Instead, animals grow until they reach the maturity and then they stop. And then most of the movement in plants are associated to growth. So the capability to add new materials and to change the shape, showing high plasticity. That is exactly what we want to implement in our robots. So we started actually about 10 years ago with this project. It was a FET open project named Plantoid, and there was really a pillar, a fundamental milestone in my research, but also we really launched a completely new research based on plants as a model. Plantoid was the first robot worldwide inspired by plants, in particular by plant roots, to develop autonomous robot for soil exploration. And we introduce a new paradigm of movement and robotics based on growing. So what is the role of growing plant, in particular in plant roots? They are the most adapted living organism to move in soil. Soil can be considered as an extreme environment where pressure and friction are very high, also in very few centimeters of depth. And they can, roots can overcome pressure because they grow at the tip level. So they add the cell, new cell, just in the apical region, absorb the water and push only the tip into the soil. The rest of the body doesn't move, so there is no friction. And at the tip level, they also have sensing properties. They can perceive gravity, humidity, chemicals. They can avoid the obstacle. They can also create a network, communicate, as I said, internally, but also with other organisms. And this is fundamental to improve the efficiency into the soil exploration. So we spent several years to understand that the secret is actually in the growing in the region that is called the meristematic region, and we translated this growing capability into robots that are able to create its own body by this additive manufacturing approach. This is one of the examples of the growing robot that we have developed in the last years. So the robot is able to grow because in the tip there is a miniaturized 3D printing machine. So there is a robot that pulls a filament, a thermoplastic filament from a spool, then gears that allow the perfect deposition, the new layer, in contact with the tip. So also in the robot, the only part that is pushing soil is the tip. And so the robot, layer by layer, is able to create its own body. So it's a growth, in fact. Here you can see a zoom of the process. So you can see that when the temperature, in fact, increases, there is a thermoresistor, in fact, inside the tip. The material is a thermoplastic material, so the temperature increases and the material becomes sticky, and the new layer can adhere to the previous one. The direction of growing is given by the sensors integrating the tip. So we integrate the humidity sensor, chemical sensor, temperature, touch. And there is a behavior also inspired by plants that is named tropism in biology. That means that roots grow following or escaping from environmental stimuli. And our robot is able to do the same. In order to bend, like in the natural root, there is a differential deposition. So we deposit more material in one side with respect to the other side, like in the natural root, and the robot is able to bend. We develop, of course, and we test our system in different conditions. We simulated the pressure also in air by adding weight up to 10 kilo. And we tested the robot in different soils with different properties. In this case, it's a granular soil in which we can control temperature and humidity. But as I said, what is also important for us is using this robot for improving knowledge also in basic science. And in fact, we use our robot, our system, in a comparison. So we compare the two robots, identical robots, in which in one case the robot is pushing from the top, and the other case the robot is able to grow from the tip. And we observe that in the growing at the tip level, we have a faster penetration and much less power consumption, less than 70%. So even if our robot is not identical to the natural root in terms of shape, in terms of material, this way we close the loop back to biology, and we demonstrate also why the natural roots grow from the tip, to reduce the energy consumption and to be more efficient in the penetration. This is another example of bio-inspiration. This is a recent version of the robot in which we imitate also the passive morphological adaptation in the root. The first step for the natural root is having a sort of buckling when they find an obstacle, and then this activates active response, so chemical reaction. In this case, we use the melting properties of the material in order to have a robot that can passively adapt to the external environment, reducing this way the energy needed for the movement and for the control. But we have, as I say, the many other kind of movement in plants. They don't have a muscle, but they can tune the stiffness. They can increase the stiffness in their tissues, in particular by playing with the water content in their tissue. And this is regulated in particular by osmosis, which means that there is a water flux from a side with a minor ionic concentration to a side, a cell with a major ionic concentration. So there is really a flux of water, and we want to use this mechanism, these properties in plant to generate a completely new actuator that are very efficient in terms of power consumption, and they can also generate a strong force. This is the way in which we translate this osmosis into an actuator. We have two chambers, one for the water, the other one for the osmolyte. We have the osmotic membrane and a bulgy membrane to translate, of course, to demonstrate the movement. And the actuation is just triggered by adding water into the actuator. And this way we trigger the water flux, and we generate a motion and a very high force, more than 20 Newton, in few minutes, like in the natural system. So in the plant, when they use a full forward osmosis, they need around 2 minutes, few minutes to move. And so what we can do, we can accelerate this movement like in many movements in plant to release a pollen, for example, by integrating a preload mechanism. So this way we can have a faster movement, or we can have a slower movement like in the system that I'm showing, in which the actuator can raise to kilogram beam just with the bulgy membrane, with a very small membrane. So this is a very nice, in fact, application, but this system is not reversible. So we have to recharge the actuator with the water, with the ions, and so on. So more recently, we again take inspiration from plants, in particular from climbing plants, to develop a tendril-like soft robot, in which we have a completely soft body in a PET material with two chambers again, an osmotic membrane, and soft electrodes. So when we apply a low voltage to the system, we can really absorb and dissolve ions, and we generate consequently a movement of water inside the structure. When the water is in the arm, the soft arm, the structure is turgid, in fact, increases the stiffness during the movement. And what we obtained with this reversible actuator is a tendril-like system that can anchor around a support. So there is a coil and uncoiling mechanism. And anchoring is very useful in many applications, like also the climbing plants need to anchor the body, because they are very peculiar plants. They use most of the energy that they have to grow faster towards light with respect to the other plants. But of course, to avoid to collapse, they have to anchor their body by using different structure like tendrils, spines, and so on, to external support. And this is the idea that we are imitating also in these artificial systems. But there are also fast movements, not only slow movement, as I showed before. This is the case of many carnivorous plants that need to be faster than the animal that they eat. This is also the case of the Onemus scipula, the Venus flytrap, that close the leaves in less than 1 second when a potential prey touches at least 2 tactile hairs inside the leaves in less than 20 seconds. This is the triggering selected during the evolutionary process to have the higher probability that the prey is inside the the leaves. So we investigate all the phenomena at the base of this fast movement. First of all, osmosis, as we said, when the prey is touch these tactile hairs, there is a loss of turgor at the base of the leaves, and so this facilitated the closure of the leaves. But it's not enough. There is also a bioinstability that is very important, this kind of movement. And we start in our investigation with the goal to develop a fast actuator. We use a polarized microscope to investigate the ultrastructure of the leaf. And what we observe is that there is a differential arrangement of microfibers in the upper epidermis with respect to the lower epidermis, and these fibers are sort of pre-stretched and are under stretching during the contraction. This facilitates, in fact, the rapid closure. So to imitate this structure, we develop, first of all, we start from soft material. We develop this system, this soft bistable structure, starting from PDMS as a substrate that is deposited by spin coating. And then we obtain two bistable sheets, so pre-stretched, and then bonded by using plasma etching process. We deposit on this sheet fiber of PO, that is hygroscopic nanofibers, and then we develop this system that is named hygroscopic bistable structure. In order to demonstrate the role of instability in the closure, fast closure of the leaves, we develop another system that is identical to the previous one, except for the phase of bioinstability. And we develop this hygroscopic layer. Then we develop this artificial system that have a structure similar to the natural leaves. And what we obtain is an artificial leaf that can snap in around 0.5 seconds, so it's very fast. But if we compare this artificial leaf with the hygroscopic layer, we observe that this latter, the hygroscopic layer, is much more slower. So the bending occurs in 10 seconds, because in this case, the movement is associated just to poor diffusion of water in the tissue, in the structure, like in many plant organisms. Instead, the Bioneuroschipula, the poor diffusion is also combined with instability. So what we can do with this concept, we just to demonstrate to you some artificial system that we have developed. We developed this lens that is in fact inspired by this bioinstable mechanism. So we have the two sheets with a PDMS dome that works as a sort of lens, and we can have a focus and defocus or laser source. So when the humidity increases in the environment, we have a bending of the lens and a focusing of the laser source. So this system is very cheap, but can be integrated in many different devices. So this is just an example of application. But there are also other kinds of movement in plants that are very, very interesting also from an artificial point of view. These are passive movements. That means that this structure, in particular the structure that releases seed into the environment, are dead structure. So there is no metabolism inside these structures, but they continue to move thanks to the interaction of the materials in the cell wall with external conditions. So with humidity in air, with the temperature, with the wind, and so on. So this is perfect to develop multifunctional materials that can really move by interacting with the environment. And so there is a matrix in this kind of structure that absorbs and dissolves water, and microfibrils that play the movement. So depending by the arrangement of these microfibrils, we can have seeds that drill into the soil, that bend, that fly, and so on. So there is many different solutions. This is the case of the Erodium chicutarium that drill, you can see into the soil, but this structure are completely dead. So this is amazing from my point of view. And take inspiration from this organization, we developed some years ago the first tentative of plant-inspired hydromorphic actuators, in which we use this soft material like the PDOT-BSS that interacts, in fact, with the humidity. In this material can absorb and dissolve water, and also PDMS that plays the movement. Since the PDOT is also a conducting material, we can apply a current to the system, and by gyroheating, there is a release of water and a consequent movement of the structure. So we can, in some way, go beyond the nature because we can control also this movement. And then we can play with this structure. We can have a softer hand, we can have a different kind of shape, we can control, as I say, the movement, or having material that interacts passively with the external environment, so they can respond to the humidity, as I said. And this way we can obtain a material that, as I said, play as a sensor and actuate at the same time. So we started from these results, but our idea now is to go beyond this scenario. Is actually in this project that is just started, as Walter said. Walter is the project officer of this FAT Proactive project, iSeed, in which the goal is to take inspiration from seed, natural seed, to develop robots that can move, and this is very complex and challenging because we want to release these seed-like software robots in real environment. They have to move by interacting with external conditions to detect key parameters in real environment. And also to increase the complexity, these robots need to be biodegradable, to have a zero impact into the environment. What is the scenario that we have in mind? There is a drone with a fluorescence LiDAR that release, in fact, the artificial seed that are, as I said, are biodegradable. We use mathematical models to improve the design of these artificial seed because, as I said, they have to move by interacting with external conditions. Then the artificial seed integrate fluorescent sensors that are activated by the LiDAR beam from the drone. So the artificial seed can release, emit fluorescence, and this way we can detect when the artificial seed are in contact with the key targets that we want to detect, like in the case of the Erodium chicutarium artificial seed, we want to detect the humidity, temperature, and mercury in the topsoil. In the case of the flying artificial seed inspired by the Samara seed, we want to detect the humidity, temperature, and CO2 in air above the topsoil. And this is the goal, of course, of our iSeed scenario. But there is another FAT Proactive project started last year, in 2019, in which the goal is to take inspiration from climbing plants to develop these growing robots, as I said, to explore the environment, to explore very unstructured conditions. So we can use this robot in many different situations. And what we like is the way in which a climbing plant find the support, negotiate the voids, anchor their body. So we can generate a completely new technology of growing robot, but also other technology based on this capability. In particular, this is just another example of what we are doing, take inspiration from climbing plant. We are inspired by the Gallio aparin. This is another climbing plant that we are using as a model. This is a parasitic plant, and this plant uses, in fact, the hooks distributed on the adaxial and abaxial sides of the leaf to attach to the leaves of the hosting plants and to be better exposed to the light. So our idea is to take inspiration from these hooks to develop artificial hooks with similar properties in terms of materials, so mechanical properties, shape, and so on. So we test these artificial hooks in terms of force, testing, touching on different substrates, and then we develop an array of micro hooks, and we attach these micro hooks with an adhesive tape to a mini car to test the performance of these attachment properties into different materials, and in particular the capability of a mini car to climb over a 45-degree inclined plane with and without hooks. And what we observe is that the mini car is able to climb only when the hooks are present. In particular, they can adhere to very different substrates. So the idea is to use this solution as a sort of Velcro at the micro scale, so we can use for robotics to have climbing robots. But the idea is also to use to release drugs, for example, for plants. We have other projects dedicated to that, but also in medicine. To conclude, also in Growbot, what we are doing is investigating plant as a source of energy. But in particular, we recently discovered that plant, in particular the leaves of plant, can generate energy when mechanically stimulated. So we can convert the mechanical energy into electrical energy by triboelectric effect. So what happens is that when we touch the natural leaves with an artificial leaf made by soft materials like silicon, we generate a charge. This is a phenomenon named triboelectric effect. And this charge are compensated inside the tissue of the plant. And by using electrode, we can, in fact, power artificial system by using this completely green energy. The way in which we test the system is by developing this machine in which we tested by using this machine. We tested, in fact, all the parameters that are required to generate energy from the leaf, that are, in fact, the frequency, the impact force, the materials, the area, and so on. And what we observe is that with just one natural leaf, in this case, rhododendron leaves, we can generate around 15 microwatt per square centimeter by using EcoFlex with artificial material and with 1 Newton impact force. And we can power, by using this energy, more than 100 LED. What is the idea? Is to generate a hybrid system. So tree in which we use plants, in which we use natural and artificial leaves moved by wind, and we can use this energy to power sensor, LED, and maybe in the future more complex system like robots in remote areas or in a very difficult condition. But this is again zero impact, and we can in some way develop something that is more sustainable from environmental point of view. So this is the scenario that we have in mind. So using this technology, Growbot and Plantoid, also in remote areas for in situ detection. This is the idea. Also in support of the existing technology in terms of environmental monitoring. But the advantage here is that this system can work continuously and in a very efficient way, but also they are cheap technology, so they can be also used for poor countries and so on. This is the idea that we had with the plantoid in particular. We started by using this concept of plant-inspired robots for space application because, of course, roots, as I said, are the most adaptable system for soil exploration, but also for anchoring. Again, anchoring is a very important application and is an open issue in space domain. So it's very important also for that. And then depending by the sensor that we integrate in the roots, we can detect water, chemicals, pollutants. So it's a tool on the hand of the human operator to have a more clear idea of the condition of the external environment. Then this growing robot can move, of course, in a very narrow spaces, can be used in archaeology, rescue, and so on. But also, when I propose the idea of a growbot, this kind of growing system, I suppose to use in the future, not within the project, but in the long perspective, this approach also to grow in infrastructure in our society. And I said, maybe, Barbara, this is too strange. But then recently I discovered that there is a place in India, in Meghalaya region, in which humans use the aerial roots of Ficus elastica, these big trees, to develop a growing bridge. And so this is exactly what we could do in the future with this kind of approach. Starting from plants, we could develop something that is much more integrated in our society, in our cities, and so on. So less impact also from a technological point of view. And this is also a new idea. This is another project. This is a NIRC project that we start in May this year, in which the focus is on the capability of plants to communicate, as I said. I want to take inspiration from the forest intelligence to create artificial network inspired by the Wood Wide Web, the natural one. Plants communicate with the fungi, with other organisms, and this network under our feet are fundamental also for reducing global warming because they absorb CO2 from air. So the idea is to use the technology to better understand this phenomena and also to help in recovering, in remediating many natural ecosystems. So this is just a summary to conclude of these last years in which we start now to consider plants as a model in robotics, as I said, and now also it's fundamental from my point of view, the role of the European vision, because we really have the possibility to push high-risk research that now have opened new domain in robotics and in artificial intelligence, and now there are many other groups in the world that are following this idea, strange idea to take inspiration from plants to generate a new technology. And the role, as I said, of the European vision to have this very high-risk project was a winning idea. And to conclude, this is also the idea that we have in ICIT. I would like in the future have robots that really are much more integrated into natural ecosystem. So they can operate in real environment, they can grow, evolve, interact with the humans, detect parameters like an ICIT, but at a certain point they disappear. So it's a sort of cycle life of robots or technology in which we can really think to reduce the impact of technology into the natural ecosystem. So they are used to better understand our planet instead of just exploiting the natural resources. So what we need to break the walls among the disciplines. So this is fundamental to address this issue, and in particular to better understand natural organisms. So we need different disciplines that work together and try to solve this complex problem. This means that we need also to train young researchers to face interdisciplinary problems and also curiosity-driven research. has this kind of project with this European vision, as I said before. And I believe that bio-inspired robotics can in fact balance modern scientific fragmentation and promote the growth of a new generation inventors and entrepreneurs. This is also my wish and my final goal. So I would like to thank my colleagues that, of course, work with me on this research area, and they really are fundamental for these achievements, of course, and they have a completely different background. This is also very important, as I said. And I would like to thank all of you for your kind affection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for this extremely inspiring. Can you switch off the microphone?
Yes. Yes.
Because otherwise we have echo. You'll take it back, of course, when you answer the questions. So yes, I think this was absolutely nice to see also the diversity of ideas that you're working on. I'll start off with the question of mine, though. It seems that engineers learn a lot from biologists, and I was wondering if the other way is also true. Have biologists actually learned something about the way they look at plants and understood better certain mechanisms because of some of the work that you have been doing or others? Is that bidirectional, that link?
Yes, as I said, this is one of the goals of my research. We already have demonstrated some principle. As I said, for example, by using the artificial system, by using this bioengineering approach to biology, we can quantify phenomena in biology. And so we can demonstrate in a quantitative way why roots, for example, grow at the tip level. But we can also better understand the role of the materials in many movements in plants. As I demonstrate in iSeed, we want to investigate the arrangement of this material to develop artificial system. And this is exactly a way then to come back to biology, because we can provide biologists with more quantitative data on the properties of the material. It's a completely different approach, but at the end, the goal is quite the same, for both the sides. And so, yes, of course, it's not easy. Also for us, we have many tools that we are using for this kind of final goal, but it's not easy also for us to understand. It's a long process also to understand that we are improving the basic knowledge. Sometimes we just discover a new idea in biology at the end of the process. So it's a very long, path.
Okay, thank you very much. It relates maybe to one question on the Slido, which is the use of virtual reality. It's probably if you use these animations, not animations, accelerated video mostly. And one of the questions is whether there are any plans to use virtual reality to showcase some of these technical projects, or even as a tool for the research in a different way. How do you see that, the virtuality versus the reality of the things that you're playing with?
As I said, in plants there are both fast and slow movements. So in some cases we need to accelerate, like in the roots. In other cases we need to decelerate because they are too fast. So like in many carnivorous plants, they are really fast, as I said, because this is an adaptation to the strategy to eat animals. So they need to be very fast for this reason. And so what is nice from my point of view is that to develop the robots, in many cases, we need to develop a setup to investigate the natural system. And this is another way to better understand the biological system, just also to reply to the first question. So, there are many different parameters and features that we can demonstrate by using plants. Fast, slow movement, depending also by the application that we have in mind. In some cases, having a slow movement is an added value. If you consider moving in soil, this is very important, because if you move too fast in soil, you increase the friction, you increase the pressure. So from our point of view, seeing a slow movement in plants could see a limitation of these living organisms, but instead is a form of adaptation to different conditions.
It reminds me, and it's also visible on Slido. I mean, 25 years ago, you had this work in artificial life. I remember the work by Carl Sims, who did this evolutionary robots who first couldn't move at all. And then by making them change morphology, they started to be capable to move. And the function that they were trying to optimize was the speed of moving. So I'm wondering, the evolutionary side is, of course, very difficult in the physical way that you do your things, but you could do a lot of that in virtual settings, and then maybe do the optimization by a kind of an evolutionary or adaptive process in the virtual and feed it back to the real. Is that something you're playing with?
Of course, evolutionary approach is not really our field, but in some case, we just see the final picture of the evolutionary process. So what we imitate is the results along evolutionary path of adaptation, as I said, to the environment. So what we extract from nature is exactly the principle that results from this evolutionary process. In the new project that we have in iWood, but also in iSeed, our idea is also to have this approach more based on AI, also to better understand how the robot can adapt and evolve the shape on the basis of the external condition. This is something that we can do, again, extracting the roots from the plant and implementing in neural networks this final picture of the natural system. And so in the new project, we want also to better understand the AI approach applied to robots that change the morphology. Okay. Controlling these robots that change the shape is a completely new vision in robotics, because of course you have a body that needs to adapt to the morphology, and also the control needs to adapt to this new body. So AI and evolutionary approach is one of the future scenarios.
Okay. Thank you for your information. We have for the moment over 200 people connected. So this is a very well-attended seminar, I would say. I pick up a question, one of the last ones that came in on Slido. Important principles of interaction are also hidden in the relationship between plants and pathogens. Are you planning to delve into these defense responses as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we in iWood in the project that we start in May. The idea is exactly that. So the way in which plants respond to the attack of pathogens is also by communicating. As I said, they establish this wood wide web under soil, in the soil, and this is a way in which they transmit the signal among plants by using these hyphae of the fungi. So they create a really physical network. They exchange the information in order to implement some strategy and in order to be more robust to the attack. By studying the way in which they respond to this attack, we can develop a completely new strategy also in the communication, in the algorithm to control this network of robots that is not based on swarm intelligence, in fact, in animals, but is based on this communication, this network between plant, fungi, organisms like bacteria, and so on. So absolutely, we want to investigate also this aspect in the future.
Thank you. Another question. It's clear that there is a relation to nature and managing nature and biodiversity, but it's maybe not so clear exactly how you see that. How can these plant-inspired robots contribute to tackling climate change, in concreto? What is the vision there?
This is my idea. I really believe that technology like robotics and AI can help in better understand our ecosystem. Why that? Because first of all, we can use a robot to detect, as I said, pollutants. This is the very simple but useful way to use our technology. And not only drone, but we can use these materials that are more, these robots that, as I said, are more integrated into the environment, because the current technology used to detect parameters like a pollutant or also simply detect the presence of water or other chemicals are not sufficient. They are used in a limited way, in a not distributed way, and they are very expensive. You need an expert, you need a very sophisticated technology. So I believe that these new kind of robots that are also poor in terms of technology, in terms of material that we use, can really contribute to better understand, first of all, if the soil is contaminated. This means protect also our health, having agriculture that are more safe, because usually we grow plants in an environment that is contaminated, and we can detect pollutant air in water in a continuous way. But also in the case of the robots that we have to develop in the future, we can also, for example, improve and use our robot for remediation or for releasing chemicals like spore. In the case of iWood, we want to release spores to facilitate this network between fungi and plants. So we can really use a robot to not only to increase the knowledge of the natural ecosystem and the relation among the organisms, but also to remediate if there are contaminated soil or other situations that are very dangerous for our health, but also for the natural ecosystem. This is the vision that I have for the future.
Yeah. One of the questions make the links with space exploration, and I was thinking one of the breakthroughs in swarm robotics came from the interest in space robotics, and I was wondering if bio-inspired robotics is also usable there. Could you send a robot like that to the moon and, for instance, have it use just the local material to grow itself and to explore the soil, the ground, or whatever? So, what do you think? Maybe you have been contacted by ESA already.
Yeah, I really like this idea. So my idea is exactly when I started my first project in this field. It was a very small project funded by the European Space Agency. As it was a feasibility study, actually. And then I moved to the plantoid funded by the FET Open program. The interest was, as I said, in the exploration, the soil, but also in the anchoring. This was the initial idea. But in fact, now with this growing robot, we could consider to grow the robot on the planet directly, yes. Without bringing a heavy robot from our planet to other planets. Of course, this is I don't have a project now on that, but this could be actually in perspective of useful application space from my point of view. Then there are other solutions inspired by other organisms, not developed in my group, but there are other solutions inspired by spiders and many other animals for space application.
Okay. If Elon Musk is listening with us now, please don't take the idea away from Europe. We will do it ourselves, okay? Another one more on the educational side. How can we stimulate young researchers or pre-researchers even to follow these kind of extremely interdisciplinary thinking in a useful way? What should we do in schools, in universities to make this work?
Of course, this is probably the more difficult part in the sense that it's not easy not to attract people to work in this field, because it's difficult, especially to create this environment in which there are different people that talk a different language, in the sense that come from different disciplines. But I think that this is also very stimulating research, and I have to say that usually young people are very attracted by robots and also by natural organisms. So combining these two worlds together, I think that can be attractive for people. And my idea for training is also to use this robot in the school to explain, for example, how a plant works, because it's not easy for, especially for children or younger people, to see plants, because they move slow and we cannot perceive the movement. And maybe a robot could be also a tool for training, to explain behavior in plants, how plants move, how they search for different targets, and so on. So this is also one of my future goals.
Okay. Another question from the Slido. Were the concerns on ethical and legal issues considered? Are there any that you could highlight there?
Using plants, unfortunately, I have to say, there is not yet ethics rules in managing plants. I think that we should change, also the respect that we have. We should increase the respect that we have towards plants. First of all, because our life simply depends from them, and also because they really represent the first step for all the natural ecosystem. So we need to protect them. But there are not, for the moment, ethics rules, and so I think that we need to work a lot on that to increase the respect that we have for these organisms. So in my research, I don't have any problem, even if we don't have any research damage for the real plants. Usually we use to better understand how they work. But yes, I think that this is an important aspect to consider.
I guess in the long run, I don't know whether you envisage that, but from your last slides, I suppose, yes, you want to maybe fold back the technology to the world of the plant. So in fact, the plant becomes a hybrid that maybe if somebody tries to damage it, it will react, or something could be useful in the Amazon forest. So you could have this hybridization, and then of course there is a big ethical concern that will come up. What is the long-term future of such a thing on Earth, right?
Of course, we test, at least now we have 2 years of testing on natural plant in which we use this kind of artificial leaves, and there is no impact on the natural plant. Of course, we want to improve the knowledge also in terms of response, but we are most what is important for us is also the basic question, the base of this energy that we produce. So the first question is a scientific question. If they use actually this energy, because when they touch the natural leaves, they generate energy actually. The problem from an artificial point of view is the very low quantity. And this is why we need to cover the natural leaves with artificial leaves. But from our results, we demonstrate that there is no impact on the natural leaves. They can have the normal rate of photosynthesis. So there is not really, for the moment, at least for the results that we have, no impact on that. The impact should be on the environment. So we want to use materials that are biodegradable, as I said. So this is also something that is important for reduce the impact.
How is the scientific community developing around this area? You say that there are people now a bit all over the world picking this up. Is there a dedicated conference on it now, or a series of workshops or journal, or how is that being structured gradually? It's an interesting case study, I think, to see how that develops.
Not yet a conference dedicated to that, but absolutely workshops. Special issues dedicated on that. There are several groups, there are some groups in USA that are starting to work, especially on the concept of growing robots. This is something that is very interesting. And also in Europe, there are a few groups that start to consider plants for developing new robots. Of course, the plants are already a very well-known model in material science, because there are many materials that take inspiration from plants, also systems in architecture that are based on natural systems in plants and so on, less in robotics, but now something's changing, and we are no more alone, so there are competitors now, so we have to work very well indeed, but we are happy for this, because of course it means that we are changing our vision with respect to plants. I can see that in 10 years there are a lot of rumor around plants, not only from a scientific point of view, but also in terms of other applications related to plant-inspired technology and so on. So I think that it's very positive.
Okay. Good. We're 5 minutes over the scheduled time, so I'll draw this to a close. Really great. Thanks a lot, Barbara. I also see you inspired a lot of people in starting to think about this. So that's a big fallout of this kind of seminars. Thanks a lot for that. This will go. This is being recorded, as you know. We will post it later on. You will get information on that. There was also a question in the very beginning about other projects. Of course, we're going to do other seminars around this kind of projects. Once I wrote a small article that was called The Zoo of FET, because if you look at the whole projects of that we do in FET, then you have a whole list of animals and plants and things that have been looked at. It goes from moths to octopuses to trees. I remember a project on communicating trees almost 20 years ago that was already planned. So I mean, these are things that have always been in the air in FET, but only now, I guess, because of the technological advances, we start to really have the possibilities to really do them, and you are a perfect example of that. So I think a link has been sent around on Slido where you can find more information on all these FET projects. So explore that, dig into that, and we will offer you more in the next few seminars to come. So thanks a lot. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Andrea, for organizing this.
Thank you very much.
And see you in the next seminar.